All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the episode 18 of Sprout HR Expert Season 6. So I'm Samira, and I'll be your host for today. And thank you so much for everyone joining in this early Thursday morning. Well, what we have for you right now is we have another exciting episode for you guys, as we will be talking about how HR has evolved in the e-commerce industry and how it will affect both industries in the future. So if you like webinars like this, please don't forget to follow our social media pages at Sprout HR Tech and be on the lookout for all new episodes. So we're also live on Facebook and YouTube as of this moment. So just to give a quick introduction of who we are, Sprout Solutions is the leading HR and payroll solutions provider in the Philippines that aims to help businesses transform and automate their HR processes. Just like the new normal of virtual festivities and Filipino spirit, we celebrate innovations by helping your business adapt digitally. So, once again, a hearty welcome for everyone tuning in this episode of Sprout HR Experts by Sprout Solutions. So, aside from that, we have an icebreaker coming up for you guys right now. So, we have one question for you guys, and we provided four options here. There will be a poll coming up to your screens right now, and you can go ahead and answer it, any of them. So, the question that we have here right now is, what is the most convenient e-commerce payment platform for you? So first here is e-wallet, bank transfer, credit card, and also debit card. Right? We'll give you like for about 15 to 20 minutes of, sorry, not minutes, seconds. 15 to 20 seconds to answer here. So far, what we have here is, 42% is e-wallet actually. I personally use e-wallet most of the time right now. I lost my wallet a few weeks ago, so I don't have any cash. We've been using Gcash for all my life already. Okay, let's see. One actually uses debit card, credit card, bank transfer. Okay, okay. I think that's about it. Right. Okay, we can go ahead and share the results. 50% actually voted for e-wallet, 19% voted for bank transfer, 25% for credit card, and 6% for the debit card. All right, thank you so much for everyone who answered the poll. And not just that, we just don't have an icebreaker for you guys. We also provided a raffle for you guys for today. So the raffle mechanics will be popping up to your screens at right now. There we have it. Okay. The mechanics that we have for our raffle is collect all three keywords and you get the chance to win 200 peso grab gift card. So the first one is collect all three keywords that will be flashed throughout the screen. Sorry, be flashed on the screen throughout the webinar. And then second will be follow Sprout official Twitter page at Sprout HR Tech. Third will be announcing the lucky winner at the end of the session. And fourth, we'll be sending you a direct message on Twitter after the session. So again, guys, you'll be winning 200 peso grab gift card. Okay. So speaking of raffle, I can go ahead and provide you now the first keyword that we have. Okay. The first keyword that we have is retail. Again, it's retail. Okay, so just go ahead and make sure that you got your keywords, and later on you can go ahead and log into your Twitter accounts and go ahead and answer it. So sayang yun kasi it's 200 peso. I personally would use it a lot of time. Okay, so I just want to let you guys know also that we'll be having a Fireside chat session later where you can ask our panelists questions about today's topic, which is understanding how the e-commerce employee now looks like. So start listing down your questions and we'll be addressing them as much as we can later on. So now I know you guys are excited as excited as I am. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you our today's speaker. She is the Chief Revenue Officer at Vivanti Advantage and Ellana Cosmetics, the #1 brand cosmetics e-commerce in the industry. So she has also been working in e-commerce since 2017 and in the digital technology space for close to 15 years in areas such as fintech, education, logistics, enterprise solutions, and digital transformation. So everyone, let's give her a round of applause, Miss Guita Gopalan.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Not good afternoon. Good morning. Sorry about that. I'm happy to be here and thank you to Sprout for inviting me to speak on this topic about e-commerce and more importantly, the people side of e-commerce. So today there are a few things that I would like to be sharing with everybody. But before I get into that, I do have some questions for the attendees and those of you that are on YouTube or Facebook, feel free to answer also in the comments. Right. So first, what is one important e-commerce question you'd like answered today? And I'll see if we can, how I can incorporate that in the next 30 minutes. Okay. So those of you that are here with us, our attendees, feel free to type that into the chat. And for those of us joining on Facebook and YouTube, you can drop that into the comments section. Okay, I'll give a few minutes for those individuals that are still crafting their questions. Okay, so I'm seeing a few questions come in. Okay, let's give it about 10 seconds more. And if merong hahabol, feel free to just add additional questions on the chat. Next question. So I just wanted to understand the composition of our group today that's joining us. So if you can just drop a yes to the following question. Yes, and the department. So who here is in HR, sales or marketing related functions, operations, and business services? Okay, so most of the individuals joining us today seem to be in an HR related function. Okay, last question. Yes or no only. Whose company has e-commerce or has plans to get into e-commerce? Any kind of e-commerce. Okay, thank you everybody for answering a few of my questions. This helps me better craft what I would like to be sharing today to all of you. So today there are two things that I really will cover during this short presentation. The first is the magnitude of change in e-commerce. So unless you're already in the industry, you may have overlooked certain things, kind of common sense, but really there's certain pivotal changes in e-commerce that affects us as a business if we are running or intend to get into e-commerce. And then second is I'd like to share from my own personal experience and view 5 realities about e-commerce and how it impacts hiring, talent development, an organization's way of working, and even so far as our culture and the principles and practices that we have in an organization. And I'll be sharing some of the strategies that I've employed in the different companies that I've worked with that have to do with e-commerce and digital, and how that has, and I'll be sharing some stories on how that has yielded for us the results that we're looking for. Now, some of the questions that were asked by our attendees, I will not be able to answer during the presentation, but feel free to bring that back up during our fireside chat, particularly questions about security concerns, e-commerce. That is a little bit more technical, but I can answer that. And in terms of organization, the organizational structure, I don't have that prepared, but I'm happy to give additional insights regarding that during the fireside chat. All right. Okay. So let's move on to getting started. So it's kind of common knowledge that in e-commerce over the last year of 2020, that e-commerce has been essentially has grown up into a teenager, if you will, right? And to give you an idea of what that looks like in terms of business value, according to Bain and Company in their partnership with Google and Temasek University in Singapore, they conducted a study early this year regarding the growth of e-commerce from 2019 to 2020. And what we've seen here is that originally there was not much of a big increase 2019 to 2020, but what 2020 establishes for the e-commerce industry is a significantly higher rate of growth. And so we're projecting now that the industry will grow to $28 billion by 2025. And that is a significantly faster growth than 2015 to 2020. Okay. Next, please. So while COVID-19 accelerated sectors like e-commerce and anything related to online media and digital, there are certain sectors that had to take a step back, like transport, online travel, booking activities that are being done online, and even some lending activities. But these are expected this 2021 as well as 2022 to be able to normalize in the coming years, right? As more people get more familiar and comfortable with making transactions online. So one of the things that we can definitely anticipate is that e-commerce will no longer be something that is maybe an aside in our companies, a small addition or contributor to our business, but in fact, a key channel of growth and stability, especially amidst the continuing uncertainty around the pandemic. Okay. So, another thing that has changed in the past year is the emergence of more complex e-commerce platforms. And that's what I'd like to share. Like 3 years ago, when we talk about e-commerce, it gives us the convenience of ordering it now and getting it at home or at the office, right? But getting it soon. So we know that it's coming. We don't know when exactly it will get there. And this is thanks to platforms like Lazada, Shopee, Zalora, and even some websites that were available. For our company at Ellana Cosmetics, that was one of the strengths of our platform. It allowed us to become number one in the e-commerce makeup category because it was unique. There weren't that many players really investing in e-commerce at that time for their own brands. Now that's a very different situation now. So the expectations of customers at that time was really that convenience of ordering it online and then having things delivered at home. Plus, of course, some of the benefits of participating and availing different promotions that the platforms are pushing. Right. So we moved now a bit further ahead towards the end of 2019 and in fact in 2020, where expectations of customers have adjusted and now are not just about ordering it and the convenience of getting it at home, but they now need to be able to get it by a certain date and time. So all of the different platforms have evolved and made better promises to consumers about the expected delivery promise, right? So get it on a specific date and time. For some, even get it by tomorrow. And for some, even get it later. Like order now and you get it in the same day. So very different from the first wave of e-commerce versus now. And moving forward, we have another area of e-commerce that has emerged last year and is continuing to emerge in the form of what is called instant e-commerce. You order it now and get it in 60 minutes, right, or within the hour. So that's platforms like GrabMart, Food Panda Shops, Picaroo, even Metromart. And the thing is, with these platforms, it goes beyond just grocery items. You can actually buy Havaiana slippers on GrabMart, for example, if you're within a certain location where that's available to you. Right? And so with all of this combined, our consumers' expectations of e-commerce are really high. And so for businesses that are coming into e-commerce now, you're not just trying to figure out how to create an e-commerce business, but you're now having to navigate all of these different complexities of service levels to e-commerce customers. This brings us to the 5 realities of e-commerce that I'd like to share. First, ceaseless commerce. Second, exponentially evolving e-commerce. Third, the rapid reactions required by e-commerce. Fourth, the inherently interdisciplinary nature of e-commerce. And 5, the boundless opportunity that e-commerce provides. Let's get into that per item. E-commerce, as you know, is always open, always available. It's essentially 24/7, and that store is running open forever, whether it's a holiday, a weekend, etc. There are stores that shut down during certain holidays or on weekends. They don't operate, but it is not to their advantage to do that. The benefit of e-commerce is that it is a store that's open 24/7. It's ceaseless in that regard. Now, how this impacts our teams and people is that one of the biggest struggles in e-commerce industry and e-commerce work is that our notions of work-life balance are not suitable for this industry. When you have a store that's open 24/7, the principle of 9 to 6 doesn't apply, right? Especially when, because of e-commerce, most people are actually shopping at times when they're not working. Prior to the pandemic, let's say with Ellana, I used to notice that we had our first peak of sales at around 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning, followed by a 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock spike. And then from 5 p.m. all the way till about 2 a.m. in the morning, we would have more steady traffic to our websites and more steady sales also coming in. So people's lives are malleable in this regard, in that it needs to work with how e-commerce is operating. And so with ceaseless commerce, some of the things that impact our people is that team members might feel like things are out of their control when they are not present. Right? And that creates for a completely different way of working, because the store is open, things are running, there is no shut off in e-commerce. So what's worked for us is actually shifting the principles of work-life balance to something called work-life blend. So those of you that are HR professionals that are hearing this for the first time, there's a lot of material available on this concept. But pretty basic is that work-life blend acknowledges the reality that people's lives at work and outside of work intermingle. So it's not about creating fixed boundaries around your time, but actually create more on creating flexible boundaries around what's important and fixed boundaries on those things that are not important. Okay? So that when you apply your time to it, you can then identify on a daily basis what you need to be putting your energy on, both at work and outside of it. What works for us also is organizing our teams not in traditional departments or hierarchies, but actually in groups of what we call SWAT teams. And within that SWAT team, they have everything that they need to be able to support each other and support the operations of an e-commerce store and business, because they are self-contained. Right? They don't need to wait for anybody else, and they have a team that they can depend on. So even if they are not present or monitoring what's going on with their 24/7 store, there is somebody on the team that is in charge at that particular time. And so this allows us not just to ensure that operations and sales are continuous with e-commerce, but also that our people are taken care of. So going now to the second point about e-commerce being exponentially evolving. Because e-commerce is primarily a technology-based or digital system, the nature of digital and technology is that it will continue to improve. So Lazada, for example, had a massive change in their system just a few weeks ago, and that means everybody now needs to adjust and learn and comply with new procedures, standards that they've set. Shopee is constantly making tweaks and changes to how their platform works. And so do other platforms that are used in e-commerce like Magento, Shopify, etc. So in the Philippines, in addition to these platforms, is that the ecosystem that we have and the infrastructure that we have is still a work in progress. So we have a lot of players, for example, in the logistics space that were born last year out of the pandemic. A lot of players that are now trying to navigate and improve on how e-commerce services or e-commerce related services are being delivered. And so things are changing. So in the past, for example, one of the largest and highest coverage logistics company used to be LBC. Today, it's no longer LBC. It's actually Ninja Van. Okay? And that just happened in a span of 1 year. And so e-commerce is changing because the technology is changing, platforms, even the digital marketing technologies, and because the infrastructure is also evolving and changing. Then lastly, competition is high, especially after last year. More entrants into the market, both existing brands that are available through traditional channels, as well as new brands that were born just because of the pandemic, right? And that competition changes the game for everybody. It makes advertising and digital marketing a more noisy space, a more costly space. But it also makes investing in ecosystem and infrastructure even more potentially profitable. So how this impacts our teams and our people is that a person's expertise is only relevant for a short period of time. They tend to outgrow it quite quickly because everything around them, everything external is evolving, right? And so how that makes people feel is they feel lacking, right? And this is something that, having been in e-commerce for several years, that we've had to navigate, right? And had to balance that constant execution activities that we do with time for learning. Right? So what works for us in our organization at Vivanti and at Ellana is ensuring that our people have a growth mindset. And we're very particular about this because we've seen how people who are not learning oriented and not growth oriented tend to fall behind, both in their capabilities, but also in their progression in their career. And so, with that, we also need somebody who can learn through unstructured or project based or on the job learning opportunities. Because a lot of these things that happen in e commerce, they don't get codified until much later. There is no training until 6 months down the line. And at that time, it's already quite late, right? So you've already lost your competitive advantage. And so that exponentially evolving nature of e-commerce means that people too need to keep up with that. And being able to create a structure for that then allows the organization to navigate e-commerce consistently as it continues to evolve. The third reality of e-commerce has to do with the rapid reactions required. I shared earlier that in the past, e-commerce had been something wherein you order now and you'll get it at home eventually. You order now and you'll get it at home in the next 3 to 5 days, right? But now we have shorter time frames. The expectation of customers in e-commerce is quite high, and they are expecting things to come faster, sooner, and not to wait. So we have shorter time frames, as little as 24 hours to 60 minutes, right? And how this impacts teams and people is that team members need true power to enact decisions. If they have to wait for approval to come 3 levels up, it takes forever. Tapos na yung laban and hindi ka pa rin nakaka-draw ng sword. Right? And so if we don't give them that power to enact decisions, then they feel useless and worthless. Right? And so what's worked for us, again, is that SWAT team, empowering that SWAT team to decide together what the best options are and what the best action is given a particular situation. We've also helped them make decisions by having clear individual and team accountability matrices. Right? What are the things that really need to be escalated to an authority figure, and what are the things that an individual or a team can make decisions on? And lastly, just a basic principle. If we see something that's happening badly, we must stop it from happening. Last year, around, I think, November or late November or early December, we had one major fiasco at Ellana. One of our discount codes, actually not a gift codes, actually, one of our gift codes, which was meant to be given to a influencer, got leaked somehow. And overnight, literally while we were asleep, we didn't realize that there were about 1.5 million worth of orders that were placed on our system because this code had been shared to people that were not supposed to. Now, along the way, somebody made a mistake. They didn't put the necessary controls in that execution, resulting in this. Right now, the first person who saw that was surprised. You can imagine there are 1.5 million pesos worth of orders that came in outside of a normal day. There was no marketing push on that day. There was no major campaign. It just happened. And so they had to make the decision, looking that something wrong was happening, to stop operations for that morning until we figured out what was happening. Okay. And that wasn't a manager. That was, at best, I believe, the team leader of fulfillment for our Ellana brand. Okay. So giving people that kind of power and responsibility is not just a good idea, it's necessary in e-commerce. Because had that person just done the job, they would have continued on to complete the fulfillment of 1.5 million orders, only for us later to realize that wala palang pera na pumasok for that amount of orders that came in. And so with e-commerce being a speedy kind of nature of business, this devolution of accountability and responsibility and power is necessary. Otherwise, your e-commerce will not scale. Moving on to the fifth reality. So e-commerce has boundless opportunity. This is what makes it really exciting. It's an unlimited shelf and there's low barriers to entry. You can be a mom with a sideline of knitting or crocheting table covers and make a fair amount of revenue from that hobby. Or you could be an entrepreneur trying to bring in new brands to the market. Or you could be a big business that is looking for additional ways to operate and new channels to distribute its products. It's easy to get started. And there's a high possibility of success, especially with small niches. Right? And so how this impacts team and people is that it's exciting. And this excitement is really a forward-leaning energy. People who are in e-commerce, who are committed to being in e-commerce, they have that. They know that this is the space that they're in. It's ever-changing, it's continuous, and they align with that really well. And so what's worked for us is to really support team members who recognize this opportunity and who have that right character, demeanor, attitude for the kind of work of e-commerce, because it's not for everyone. When we go back to these 5 realities, ceaseless commerce, evolution, continuing evolution. You could go to the next slide, please. Rapid reactions, and I think we missed out on inherently interdisciplinary. Sorry, let me talk about that before I summarize. So e-commerce is inherently interdisciplinary. What this means is that while you need specialists, you equally need generalists of the same value. Because the speed at which things move requires the generalists to be there in the middle, bringing things together. And so even with that, in order for teams to work effectively in a SWAT team, they need to understand each other's perspectives, each other's responsibilities. And so this is where team learning and team structured learning can really come in educating each of the different team members how to work together, what is important in the different departments, so that they can have empathy when actually collaborating and pursuing the objectives that they have. Okay. Then we go to the boundless opportunity. So these are the 5 things. So ceaseless commerce, exponentially evolving e-commerce, required rapid reactions, inherent interdisciplinarity of e-commerce, and finally, the boundless opportunity that we have in e-commerce. These 5 things are definitely things that are characteristics of e-commerce. Now, there's many different ways to go about how to deal with this as an organization. I've shared a few things today. Some of the things that have really worked for us is really making sure that people that are joining us in the e-commerce divisions of our company are ready for that ceaselessness and have a intent to act because of the speed that's required. So when you are thinking about your business and how to navigate e-commerce, I hope you think about these 5 different areas. There are a lot of different ways to organize it, but there's one way definitely not to organize it. If your company has not been doing e-commerce a lot, or if your business is not oriented towards e-commerce, it will require transformation. And this is not just in the teams that are handling e-commerce, but can go all the way up to your how finance is managing your e-commerce business. It's a whole different way of doing business. And thus, it requires a new structure as well. So thank you very much to everybody for allowing me to share today. My name is Guita Gopalan from Vivanti Advantage. And thank you for the privilege of sharing some of the lessons that I've learned working with different brands and companies in the e-commerce and digital space.
All right. Thank you, Miss Gitter, for that presentation. So I'm sure our audience has learned truly a lot on that. But before we go to the fireside session, we'll go ahead and provide you time to jot down your questions, and later on we'll be addressing them with our panelists here. So while you guys are jotting your questions down, it's time to reveal our second raffle keyword for this webinar. So are you guys ready? Yeah, here we go. So our second raffle keyword is e-marketing. Again, guys, it's e-marketing. Okay, so while you're jotting down your questions, also jot down your keywords. So I already provided you guys two keywords. Later on, I'll be providing the last one. So, but before we reveal the third and final raffle keyword, here at Sprout is inner culture to keep practicing work-life integration. So if you're down to learn more about us as a company, please take a look at this video.
So you've got your processes, and your company is an oiled machine that runs pretty smoothly, but under the hood, you have problems. You've got managers desperate to know the status of their open positions, leave requests getting lost in a jumble of emails, SMS and forms, and employees complaining about payroll errors. You've thought about some expensive custom software that would be a pain to maintain, or swimming in all the features of SAP or Oracle, or maybe even outsourcing your payroll altogether. Why can't you find a local, intelligent, well-supported software that caters to your needs as a Philippine company? Well, guess what? Here at Sprout, we've developed a system that just works. One system with all the features you need and without all those that you don't. So what are you waiting for? Get over to sprout.ph and get your systems fixed today.
All right, thank you so much for watching that video. And before we finally reveal our third and final raffle keyword, I'd like to call on our legal intern, Miss Katrina Decanay, to give us the latest legal updates.
Hello, good morning, everyone. So, from the legal perspective, protection of employment in the e-commerce landscape has been solidifying and becoming increasingly apparent. So, one example of a recently issued advisory is from the Department of Labor and Employment, which is to help set the standards in determining work relationships introduced by the booming delivery service sector. So, these are the companies like Grab, Lalamove, Mr. Speedy, etc. So under this advisory, delivery riders who are considered employees of the digital platform company are entitled to the minimum benefits under the Labor Code of the Philippines, such as minimum wage, 13-month pay, overtime, holiday, among others. And of course, the standard like SSS, PhilHealth, Pag-ibig, and more. Meanwhile, those deemed as independent contractors will be governed by their respective contracts with the company. But DOLE imposed that these should include safety standards like the use of protective helmet, PPE, and regular training on road and traffic rules and road safety. But most importantly about this advisory is that DOLE identifies the methods to determine the existence of an employer-employee relationship between the rider and the company, which are the fourfold test, the economic reality test, and the independent contractor test. So these methods are especially important since companies in this industry may differ in terms of their business model and thus the type of employment for their drivers. And with different types of employment comes different rights or different levels of protection they are entitled to. So by determining the employer-employee relationship, companies can ensure that they are giving their employees what they are lawfully due. So that is the legal update for today. Thank you. Um, Hi, Samira, you're on mute.
Okay, thank you so much for that. All right, there we have it. Sorry, thank you so much for that one. Again, thank you, Katrina, for that. To be on the known for the legal updates, make sure to follow us at Sprout HR Tech on our Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter accounts. All right, so it's time to finally announce our third and final raffle keyword. So please take note on this, guys. So our third raffle keyword is procurement. Again, it's procurement. So just to recap, our three raffle keywords is retail, e-marketing, and procurement. So again, to join the raffle, simply follow our Sprout Twitter page with the handle at Sprout HR Tech and comment these three keywords on our latest pinned post. We will be choosing our lucky winner via Twitter, so make sure to comment your answers on our pinned post. Okay, so for the next portion of this webinar, we'll be having a fireside chat session with our speaker and panelists. So if you have questions or if your questions are already ready, I saw there are already some questions on the chat. We'll be now addressing them. So I'd like to welcome back our speaker, Ms. Gita, and to our panelists today, Ms. Charlene Kananan and Katrina Decanay. So, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is yours. You may now start asking your questions. So, here is what the first thing that I want to address with. Hold on. Checking it out. Okay, so the first question here earlier was, what are the new security measures available for those who are using e-commerce? So maybe Ms. Gita, can you answer that one for us?
Sure. I'm going to assume this question is as a, what do you call this? As a buyer. Is that, I'm going to assume now. So the person who asked this question, if my assumption is wrong, please drop a note. So as a user, okay, there's a few things you really need to be mindful about. One is that you are sharing not just your personal location information, but also potentially your financial information. So number one, regarding your personal information, like address and stuff, that one is an unavoidable information that you need to disclose. Otherwise, you won't get your parcel. I think in the past, you would order and then deliver to like an office. I think that was one of the security measures. But given many are now mostly working from their place of residence, that's no longer possible. So this is where choosing the platforms that you use is important. So platforms like Lazada, Shopee, Zalora, these very big ones spend a lot of resources to ensure that security attacks are not successful, right? Now, in addition to that, I think you've probably all seen activities and practices of people. Once they receive their parcel, they cut up the delivery invoice and information. Those are good, especially to make sure that it's more difficult for somebody with malicious intent to do harm to you and your family. So that's on that side. Now, there are also a lot of smaller sellers that sell online in in different kinds of platforms. No, a few things that I would encourage you to look out for is do they have official payment methods? So, for example, the GCash and PayMaya corporate accounts. It's an additional layer of protection because these companies have done minimum due diligence to know that transactions are happening correctly between two entities. Yun lang, again, the nice thing about e-commerce is, anybody can start. You don't need to have a corporate account. You can use your personal GCash or personal PayMaya or other types of wallets and bank details. That's where the additional risk comes in. So if you are somebody that is very concerned about about security, I would recommend you going with the more established platforms to make your transactions. Or if you'd like to use a different like mga smaller websites, check that they have those kinds of options. Of course, cash on delivery is always an option for you from a financial perspective, but it's not always that convenient. Yeah, I hope I answered that question to our asker.
Yes, thank you. Maybe Charlene and Kat can add on to that.
Yeah, I'll just quickly add on it, on what Gita has mentioned. Apart from going for the more established websites, if it's unavoidable that we had to go through separate or individual websites, because there are brands like that, Of course, they want to have their own identity. on having their brands listed on the internet or on the web. So if, for example, there's a separate brand with their own website, and then pag magbabayad na tayo, you'll be redirected to another website. Be wary na lang on the website or on the URL. So for example, the brand that you're buying from is company ABC. And then once you get redirected for the payment, it got to a fishy one, something that's not related to company ABC. So be wary na lang of that. And as much as possible, if we are transacting, make sure that we don't give out like OTPs to someone who would call you. And that's pretty much standard naman. But yung basic na lang siguro, I think, in terms of the website, if it's not from the big three e-commerce sites, that's one thing that's really helpful, at least for us as shoppers, and also for someone who has their own businesses online. Maybe Katrina can add to more on the legal side of it, no?
Yeah. Okay. So with regarding to new security measures, I think one important thing to take note of for those in the e-commerce industry is to be more compliant with data privacy and security. I think that's very important. So one new regulation that's being implemented now is the General Data Protection Regulation of the EU. And even though it's based in the EU, it actually applies to essentially all businesses in the e-commerce industry, especially since this reaches the international level. So by tightening or by strengthening policies on data privacy, such as your responsibilities as a data controller, data processor, anything that has to do with data, you'll definitely be more compliant and more credible for consumers and other partners and whatnot.
All right, thank you so much for that one. We can go ahead and proceed for the next question here. So here's a common question that any people would actually think of. So Ms. Minda mentioned this one. Does e-commerce mean we need less employee?
To some degree, yes. Certain functions you can maximize the same individual, and they escape the revenue requirement. So, for example, if you're doing business brick and mortar, for every location that you have, you need a structure of people in the store, then outside of the store supervising logistics, and then above that, etc. But with an e-commerce store, on the sales and marketing side, you don't need as much. So, for example, one sales and marketing or sales manager or marketing manager can serve that store, and then that's it. Or maybe you need a few more people depending on how complex your organization is. However, on the operations side, this is where it's quite different. So what you lose in what you gain in terms of smaller operations on like logistics and multi-location logistics, you now have to have a counterpart in consolidated warehousing and fulfillment and dispatching. And so what you gain here is that you don't necessarily have to do fit outs, designing the store, so you save on that stuff. But then you now need warehousing and individuals that can do individual pick and packing for every retail transaction versus bulk warehousing, which you used to need to do for retail. So there are certain areas or functions wherein it can be very lean, and then other functions that you now need a larger manpower.
I think it's also important to know, to what Guita has mentioned, the product that we're selling online, no? Because there are some who sells online goods like ebooks or other services that you don't need a hard product for. So we can account for the number of employees or how lenient or how big our staff could be depending on the product that we are offering the market.
Yes, so basically, I think Ms. Geeta and Ms. Charlene covered that already. Maybe just to further concretize it, especially depending on the product, it also affects the need if they need a physical store. So in one way, I guess there's a lesser need for employees in regarding physical stores, like running the stores in malls or in other places that require a physical store.
Okay, thank you. Here's another question here. What are the vital positions needed for a successful e-commerce business?
To be honest, I think it's the same. You still need somebody in marketing, somebody in sales and promotions, somebody doing, I'm going to assume physical products for this one. Somebody doing merchandising and promotion, somebody handling inventory, warehousing and fulfillment. So generally speaking, you still need the full supply chain. Yun, hindi nawawala yun. Now, what is critical that may not be part of your common, or not common, like just brick and mortar, is there is one type of role that is inherently different for e-commerce. And this one could be filled by an agency outside of your organization or could be in-house. And that is your performance marketing specialists. Okay. Performance marketing is different from digital marketing in one specific objective. The goal of performance marketing is to generate sales. They generate traffic to generate sales. It's not about brand awareness. It's not about how many likes you have on your Facebook page, how many comments, etc. Their primary objective is to generate sales. And we're able to do that in e-commerce because we have clear visibility of the data when we're running advertising campaigns online and even some offline to how that's driving into your digital store and how that's eventually converting into sales. So that is one unique one that is really more proper for e-commerce.
And if it's in terms of physical goods, we need, regardless if we want a big group or a lenient group, no. What Guita has also mentioned earlier is the work blend. So there are HR practitioners in our audience right now, which I think they're interested to know how can they balance also that work and blend. Kung kunyari maliit lang yung group natin, they had to double hat, kumbaga, because it's they would say it's a small business lang naman, ganyan. So it's important also to note or to differentiate what are the tasks for that specific person, especially if it's a small one, regardless if it's a brick and mortar or like a really big brand, no. So it's really important to draw the line for a work-life blend. I think that is something that HR practitioners in this call would really appreciate and would like to draw the line and understand how they can help also their staff. Lalo na pag magko-Q4 na, so it's the peak season, right? Sometimes we would do that forecasting on how many staff we need pa, or do we need to just maximize their time, extend it in overtime hours. So it's important also to note on that HR side. Kasi it's not just boosting sales at all, right? It's also looking after our staff and having that work-life blend, which I really like, which Guita mentioned earlier in her presentation.
Yes, and I think I'd just like to add to that. In terms of security, I think the position of a data protection officer would be vital, especially since 2020, like this is regarding a general scope. 2020 was the worst year. I'd say this is based on the risk-based security. 2020 was the worst year for data breaches, and this could really impact the overall survival of a company or of a business with regards to their the life of the business in general. So basically, having a data protection officer may be very helpful for e-commerce businesses to secure their data and just to protect themselves all in all.
I'd like to add lang to what Attorney Katrina said. It's
Sorry,
not.
I'm not an attorney, but yes.
sorry. To what Katrina said then. It's not just about having a DPO. Your DPO is a compliance item. Okay. You need to, by law, have a DPO assigned. But more than just having a DPO, your organization needs to have the structures in place for how to handle data. Whether you are data protection applies not just to customer information, but even employee information. So it's just that in e-commerce, we handle more customer personal information than others. And the scope of the DPO is not just on the information that you handle, but also the information that moves between different partners in e-commerce. So if, for example, you're a company that you work with a different group for your fulfillment, you need to have the controls in place so that they don't do something weird with the data that you're passing on to them, and vice versa. So it's not just about the data that you handle; it's also about the data that the your partners are handling on your behalf.
Okay, thanks so much for that one. We have another question here is what do we need to look out for when deciding which external agency can properly guide when it comes to leveraging on e-commerce? The company is not yet in e-commerce today, but we need to do it right.
Okay, I'm guessing that's mostly for me. Well, two things. So when we started with Ellana as our brand, we were in the same position looking at different agencies to help us and support us. And this was back in 2017. And at that time, wala talaga may alam ng kahit ano. Ngayon, medyo mas may alam na ang mga tao sa bagay-bagay. But it's still not yet at the level that it needs to be for really robust e-commerce. So what our company had to do is we actually consulted with groups overseas back in 2017 to better understand the landscape and the tools and etc. needed for e-commerce to grow. Now our company handles not just Ellana as a brand, but we also handle other brands that we distribute online. And the thing that we learned in this exercise of understanding the different players is to really look at three things. Number one, are they sales oriented? Whether it's a fulfillment group or a digital marketing group, the focus has to be on sales. Okay. Not marketing, not brand awareness. Why? Because you have another function that has to handle that. If you're coming into e-commerce, it is a sales-driven endeavor. So that has to be at the forefront. And so for digital marketing, we go back to that performance marketing segment where it's about sales conversion. And then on the operations side, it's not just about moving products, it's about ensuring that the products are delivered to the customers. Because unlike other parts in the world, Southeast Asia has this unique, not Southeast Asia, Asia has this unique transactional element called cash on delivery. So you have not made money until the product gets into the customer's hands and the delivery rider has collected cash. And so even if you make $1 million, for example, in a day online, until that product is with the customer and the cash is collected, you haven't made that money yet. And so that sales objective needs to cut through your whole organization. If we were in the US, for example, and where it's primarily credit cards and other forms of direct payment, it's a different issue. Fulfillment is about quality and making sure that people get things on time. But here we have COD. So if the COD transaction does not materialize, you didn't make a sale. So make sure that you're aligned. It's all about sales.
On that side, that's on the revenue side, no, and then the operation side on how we get the ball rolling on the business perspective. Now, I'm gonna speak in terms of the internal side naman for the HR. How do we get to partner with the right people? So if you're a growing company, say Ellana, they started say 5, and then they had to grow to 200 in a span of 3 years or 4 years because the brand grew, and then there are more traction in the market. In terms of having to manage it internally, of course, you need to partner up with someone that could help you if that's something that you're not an expert of, say HR. Partnering up with something or with an organization that could help you blend how you can incorporate the proper, say, payroll, proper HR handling, and then their benefits on that side, which I think HR practitioners, if you can relate to me, just type in your thoughts on this now. So if you're in that space that you're handling multiple employees at once, of course you need to plug in with someone who can help you in terms of that, like their benefits, the payroll, those things, no, and even looking after their mental health. If it's a big organization, or you are an organization in this call right now who has clients in the e-commerce business, so that's something also that we can look into. No, there are some, regardless if it's if that's just more on the HR side, or that could be also on the legal side, like Katrina has mentioned. There are consultants or consulting companies who can provide you that necessary information or expertise that you would need.
So yes, I definitely agree with Miss Gita and Miss Charlene. I think they've covered everything. But
All right, thank you. I think I saw Miss Elaine Gador here who raised her hand. Do you have a question for us, or you can go ahead and actually um, talk if you want to? Canon. Is Miss Elaine still here? All good, man. All right, thank you. We have a last question here that we can answer. So from Yinda again here, if the product of the company is technical service or IT support, is there value in engaging with e-commerce, or is it not advisable at all?
Without knowing what kind of technology business you are in, I can't answer that. Is there a need for technology support? Yes. For small businesses, they tend to use a lot of SaaS solutions. But once business scales, they now need a lot of custom solutions and integrations to existing, whether it's SAP or ERP or whatever they're using, Oodle. Yun. That's the most I can answer without more information about what exactly you guys do as IT support, IT group.
Yes, I believe that's true. There isn't much detail into that question. So, okay. Now, so apologies for that one, but that is all the time that we have to answer your question, guys. But again, thank you so much to our speaker, Ms. Gita, and to our panelists, Ms. Charlene and Katrina, for answering the questions that we have for today. And we hope we're able to answer most of your questions out of that. Again, thank you so much, guys. And so, for any e-certificate request, you may follow the instructions that you see on your screens and send your request through this link, bit.ly/certificate request form, or you can scan the QR code that you have here on your screens. All right, that is the QR code, and there is also a note. This form will expire for 24 hours, and we'll be sending you the link through the chat here. There we have it. Okay. So now for the moment that we've all been waiting for, I'd like to announce the lucky raffle winner. Her name is Marilyn Esteban. Again, Marilyn Esteban will be the winner for a raffle. Congratulations! Please send us a DM on Twitter that we can. Oh, there's a applause. Thank you so much for that. That we can send to you the instructions on how to get the Grab gift card. Again, thank you for participating, and at the same time for everyone. And have a great day ahead. So happy Thursday, everyone, and goodbye. By the way, please don't forget to follow our social media pages